Alan Orr, immigration attorney, Alan Orr. Man, thank you for this. I know it was short notice, and I appreciate you being able to join me. How are you doing this morning?
Doing pretty good. How are you?
I am doing good. Better that you are joining me. Um, I want to get into Donald Trump coming into office, and one of the mainstays of his policies had to do with immigration. He hit that hammer like nobody's business. Immigration. Oh my God, the people are coming to get us. They're coming to get us. Like that was a theme of his campaign. He was the immigration guy, and they believed that this was a weakness in the Joe Biden administration, and they were able to exploit that weakness. And I don't think that was the thing that won the election, but it definitely didn't necessarily help Joe Biden or for the United Democrats as a campaign issue. All right. It came out recently that Donald Trump is saying that he effectively wants to deport millions, kind of pull another Obama, but he also wanted to use the military in order to do this. Now, this was Trump in a speech. This was, I believe, before the election, but he seems to be serious about it. I mean, he has already said, I am going to fulfill my campaign pledges. And the fact that he spent all of that time talking about immigrants, this seems to be something he plans on doing. This was Trump during the election.
Immediately upon taking the oath of office, I will launch the largest deportation program in American history.
The largest deportation program in American history. And it came out that he planned on using the military in order to affect this. And my first thought was, is that even legal? Is it legal to use the military for these kind of domestic concerns? I don't know the law around this. So what's going on with this?
Yeah, so I think let's separate a lot of things as a conversation, because the first thing we should know is what really controls immigration and immigration law is Congress. And if Congress doesn't pass an immigration bill, no matter who the president is, they're going to be limited in exactly what they can and cannot do, because if the laws haven't changed, it doesn't matter who the president is, the laws are still the laws. And so therefore, we have a removal system that has been upheld by the Supreme Court, which is a product of the backlog we have because we don't have enough judges. We've never sort of modernized our systems from the 80s. So therefore, this immigration thing has been in place since President Trump ran the first time. So he ran on immigration the first time, he ran on immigration the second time. So the conversation about what he can fulfill in that is very limited. What he's capable of doing right now is creating an atmosphere of fear and intimidation, which will control and frighten many immigrants in this country, because it's just impossible to remove every undocumented person in this country. Also economically not feasible for us and not beneficial to the United States. Regardless of who the president is, I am pulling for the United States, and I want us to have good immigration policy to meet the needs of the people and also not hurt us financially by removing too many people from all of these different environments.
Right.
Back to the center question that you asked me, can the president use the military to remove immigrants from the United States? And the answer is no, wholeheartedly no. There is a 1878 act called the POS Act that basically says the president cannot deploy military forces in the United States without Congress's agreement, and only if there's a national emergency. And so therefore, this concept that undocumented immigrants who have been here for 20 years are all of a sudden a national security threat enough to deploy Department of DOD to round up individuals just is not an answer.
I know, but Alan, that's a perspective issue. Like what I've learned about politics, if I haven't learned anything else, is people can define anything that they want to, whether it's true or not. Meaning reality doesn't really apply to the way that human beings talk about stuff. So, for example, George Bush can say, well, this isn't torture, this is enhanced interrogation. And people would say, okay, well, it's enhanced interrogation. And it's like, no, that's torture. You understand that's torture. Everybody and their mama knows that waterboarding is torture, or for that matter, putting somebody in the cold room or beating somebody to death, that those things are torture. And yet they would say this is enhanced interrogation. And this is the way we're going to treat it, as if there's a different box for the same thing.
I don't think that this is the same thing, because in that case, the interrogation would already been able to take place.
Well, I guess
you're not able to deploy the military now, so you're not able to make it any harder than what it is. There's no the door isn't open to have the variants that you discussed in that scenario. There is no military enforcement.
Say there's a national emergency. I got elected. Immigration was part of my platform. I defined there to be a national emergency in regards to the number of immigrants that are here. And he can even say, The case in Colorado, where you have these Venezuelan gangs that took over an apartment building. This isn't tolerable. This can't be done. We need to do something immediately. I am declaring a national emergency. My name is Donald Trump. You're saying he can't do that.
He can't. If he wants to change immigration, he has to pass immigration law like he did before. I think this concept is beating the drums of fear and sort of thinking that we're going to deploy the military in our own places. And just think about that. The military is not trained in constitutional law. So therefore, you can't have these individuals sort of persecuting American citizens, because then they're going to sue the government. And then where are we going to be with those lawsuits, right? It only takes one American to be caught up in a DOD issue to become a federal issue. And specifically, if that American is someone who supported the Trump administration. Right. So you just can't deploy those resources in that kind of capacity. It's just not in our Constitution that way. So the concept that he's going to be able to do that is just beyond the pale. I think it does hit the drum that he wants to hit, which is intimidation. But if he wants to change immigration law, great. Pass an immigration bill. There's your answer. If you want to change the way asylum is done in this country, change the asylum law. If you want to change the way immigration courts are done in this law, change the immigration courts. You're the president. Just like we put this big mandate on Joe Biden to get all this legislation passed on his priorities, then change them. You don't get to, as one form or one part of the government, to change everything within the government. That is not what the American people elected you for, and that's not your job. If you want to change these things, that's why change is very slow in our system. That's why our democracy is basically survived, because it isn't on a whim that you're able to just get up and do things overnight. And the concept of deporting one person through ICE Air is around $8,000 on a commercial flight. On a private flight, it's $26,000 to deport one person on a private flight. So that financial cost, coupled with the removing of people who are doing these jobs, who've been doing these jobs for a long time, also next to the concept that these employers knew they were undocumented, why don't they have any criminal offenses? Why aren't they the villain in the story? Why aren't they being hellable for the story? Letting them go doesn't make a good narrative for the U.S. system, especially where we are today. When we think about all of these towns that need to be rebuilt after this weather, and now we see these fires, who's going to do that? I don't know a single welder in this country that's American. I don't know one welder in this country that's American. Most welders are immigrants from other countries at this point, because it's just not an occupation that Americans do anymore, right? 25% of the agricultural world are all immigrants. So now we're going to be importing food that might not have, even the food that we get from this country right now has had a lot of Ebola, different type of stress levels of not going through the right system. So now we're going to start importing all those things from across the border and then get the tariffs that go along with it, because the farmers here don't have anyone to pick it. It's just not a well thought out plan. There are better solutions, even within the Republican framework, modeled after Ronald Reagan. Go back to Ronald Reagan and say, you know what? People have been here a long time. Sure. Not the best thing for us, but let's do some equity here. Let's charge them a fee, get them in the system, make them go through a process. And then if they become citizens, they become citizens. If not, they have work authorization and we know who we are, and we can focus on the real criminals. The last thing that I will tell you in this concept is, while I don't think that Tom Horman's policies and his concepts are the best, I've known Tom Horman for a while, and he is a good cop. He knows about the Fourth Amendment rights of American citizens.
That's the guy that Trump put as the head of
the czar. That's the czar for immigration.
Right.
He's also been in ICE for a long time after the reformation of the Department of Homeland Justice. And I can't believe that he would want to invite the DOD into something that he's going to be governed as a policy issue, so that it does not become a sham.
Yeah. There's also an ethical issue associated with the role of military, meaning their job is to kill. Their job is, to maintain, to kill. Right. It's not about policing. Their job is something else. They have a different philosophical responsibility that doesn't necessarily want to be unleashed on the American public. They're not cops in that sense. They have a different responsibility. Right. Wow. Last question. If you had to change, if you could whisper in the president's ear, even in the Republican context, to make, I got to be honest, I was shocked at how bad our immigration system is when I had the opportunity to bring people on and talk about it. And people from the left and people from the right ultimately agreed upon, we have severe problems in the way that we do immigration. The idea that we bring somebody into the country, they could be here for 10 years, and then we could tell them, sorry, your immigration claim was denied. They've had a life. They might have gotten married. They'd be all of this stuff might have taken place over the course of the time that they were here. And then all of a sudden they have to go home. And that's assuming you can even find them to give them a letter because of how long they've been here in the United States. The number of judges seem to be somewhat of a problem. Joe Biden's plan with the CBP One app seemed to be somewhat weird in the way that he was trying to implement it. Like all of these things seem to be
Well,
somewhat.
CBP1 predated Biden. I think a lot of it's a communication problem, but let me put it to this way, because I think this is something that people can understand the Beltway. This is about choices, right? We have now heard that we don't care about how much money it costs to deport everybody, right? Why don't we care about how much money it would take to fix the system, right? Why is it about deporting and not fixing the relevant problem? Why has our immigration not been updated since the 80s? Why has it been 30 years since we have, and all other countries have done so? So these are choices. And while our immigration system is not running effectively, because by design, we still have one of the most innovative immigration systems in the world, where we accept a lot of...
Stop for a moment. You said by design. Explain that.
What do you mean?
Well, you said the immigration system is not working properly, and you said it's not working properly by design.
By design, yeah, because nobody's updated the laws. Nobody's changed the numbers. Nobody's changed the regulations since the 80s. You can't operate a company. I mean, it's just like our school system. We operate it as if we're sending people to factories. We need to modernize the way we educate people. We can't keep teaching people how to use a rotary phone when people are using cell phones. That's the problem with immigration. It hasn't been modernized in so long that by design, it is failing because no Congress has taken up the issue to change the laws. And that's the only way it's fixed. And I don't know why the American people keep thinking that a president is going to change immigration when it is clear, whether it be a Republican or Democrat, whether they deport a lot of people like Obama or they don't deport a lot of people, whether good at the border, as some people think Trump was because of COVID, or not good at the border, as they think Joe Biden was, although it's very effective with the numbers that just came out. They don't change the system. The concept of closing, this is the other fiction that I want people to know. The concept of closing the southern border is just that, a fiction. It is just say no to drugs. As long as there is a market for it, there will be something happening somewhere. And before we focused on the southern border, there are ample number of people who are just overstaying their visas. So if we're going to address a problem, we need to address it holistically and not in a racially basis way, because sort of point to the southern border points to economically deprived migrants and Black and brown migrants just by numbers and impact. Why not talk about all the immigrants in the perspective, right? All the ones. If you want to talk about asylum, many of the asylum cases filed before the big rush at the southern border were filed by Chinese nationals who flew in. If asylum's a problem, then why aren't we talking about that group of asylum holders? And I don't think asylum is a problem. So
how would they fix? Oh, I'm sorry. Please finish. I'm sorry.
So I think we're making choices and we're doing winners and losers. And part of that fits into this narrative of we only want a certain type of immigrant or a certain ethnic group of immigrant, which is not the power for which the United States is based on.
I see. How would they fix it? And this will be the last question.
Sure.
How, like, meaning, let's say in a Republican context, because the Republicans have the House, Senate, and the presidency at this point, how would they go about trying to resolve, fix, tweak, update? What would that look like? If you could whisper in the ear and say, hey, Mike Johnson, this is what we need to do in order to get the system straight.
Sure, I think it would take the will of the people. Mike Johnson isn't the person for it. I mean, unfortunately, he's not. John Thune may be a person who might be about the policy of getting the work of the people done. Mike Johnson is, to me, is not the person to sort of lead the party in the direction to get anything done effectively. He could surprise me. You know, his Christian background should lead me in a way to think that he would be about welcoming the outsider, but he hasn't proven that to me yet. The answer would be that we need a system that, yes, removes individuals. But as you said, people who've been here for a long time, who have built their life here, they have an equity argument that we should meet with justice and say, you know what, we didn't deport you. There's no statute of limitation immigration. That would be the fastest way to fix this. If there's a statute of limitation immigration saying, if we didn't remove you in 10 years, then here's the system for you, right? Very easy thing to do. Or start one today. Say, if you're in the country by this time, this is the process that you have to go through. Here are the fines that you have to pay. We're going to get you in the system. We're going to vet you to make sure that you're not a criminal problem. And then that way, when people show up, you're able to vet those individuals. And then you can sort of focus on those that did not register or did not come to the system to remove them. Part of what we saw with DACA, which was the smallest class of immigrants, that now they're so focused on saying, let's end DACA, where those individuals were children when they came to the country. It wasn't their choice. They're working at companies today, teaching our children. And we're saying, oh my God, let's get them out of here. Who does that benefit?
Yeah. No, good point. Very good point. Alan, man, thank you for this. I was fascinated by this issue, especially with the notion of the military. And like my first thought was, how is this legal? I didn't believe that you could use U.S. military on home soil. I mean, maybe the National Guard, of course, but it didn't necessarily.
But they're at the border, but they're not doing CBP issues. They're just supporting CBP. So it's a different thing, building fences, stuff like that. They're not actually doing criminal enforcement because they're different bodies. As a lawyer, what I want to say to you, as you've already expressed, someone in the military is not trained on the constitutionality of their actions. Right. Someone in the military is released and saying, go kill and get this target, right?
Right. Yeah, you typically don't use that on other Americans, just because of the
We
context in
don't,
which
we
they
shouldn't, and
use.
we shan't.
Alan Orr, man, thank you for this. Immigration attorney. Alan, where can people find your stuff, by the way?
You can find me Alan Orr on Blue Sky or Alan Orr Esquire on Twitter. So happy to, we're going to be pushing a lot of information to immigrants to sort of keep them informed of the constitutional rights of due process. I say this, some immigrants should be removed.
Yeah.
But there is a process for it.
Alan Orr, man, thank you for this. I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too. All right. Definitely.